This is Chicago. At the dawn of the 21st century, Chicago's media was dominated by a handful of major corporations. But a resistance movement arose to free Chicago's media from their clutches. One player in this movement is the Chicago Independent Media Center and its TV show, Chicago Independent Television. The Independent Media Center is a worldwide network of grassroots correspondents committed to using the tools of the media for promoting social and economic justice. You are watching this month's dispatch from the Chicago Independent Media Center.
Welcome to Chicago Independent Television, a collection of progressive video reports by grassroots media workers free from corporate or commercial support or influence. My name's Billy. In this episode, we'll join a march critical of the major media and learn about an Illinois hearing on the nuclear industry. We'll also see a protest against the oil extraction process known as fracking, following living wage efforts from Chicago fast food workers, and join a Chicago rally on the global warming and EPA. Stay with us.
Chicago Independent Television is not brought to you by Coca-Cola, whose logo is stained red by the blood of murdered Colombian labor union organizers. Learn more at killercoke.org. Coke, the drink of the death squads.
Mr. Bishop, I want to use this picture on the front page of our next issue.
Oh, come now, Nancy. We can't print a picture like that. Paper is read by people all over the city. Just think what a picture like that would do to the reputation of our newspaper.
I don't think we should hide things just because they're unpleasant. How do we stop things like this if we don't let the people know they're happening?
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Chicagoans took part in a march against the mainstream media that was critical of their lack of full and fair coverage of America's media. We'll learn more about this in this segment.
This is Mike Callis reporting for Chicago Independent Television. Today is November 16th, 2013, and we're here on scene at the March Against Mainstream Media. Today was a national day of protest against the mainstream media, organized by the group Anonymous. Today in Chicago, dozens of protesters showed up to show their outrage at the lies and misinformation that is being peddled to them as news.
Report the truth! The media has been feeding us lies and haven't told us the facts of what's going on around the world. Like, do we really care what Lady Gaga is doing? No, we care about what's happening around the world. What our government's doing right now with our money and taxes and everything. So I believe that Fox and any other news channel is a bunch of lies to us.
Yeah, there's no better evidence that the media has no intention whatsoever to listen to the people than what we're seeing here today. We have about 50 or 60 people that have been walking from media outlet to media outlet. And we've been walking right up to their doors. And so far, no reporters have come to talk to us.
They're behind us?
They're closing up.
Oh, okay. Oh, they're closing up now. Oh, that's convenient. If we harass an outlet bad and long enough by adding pressure to them, we can get them to stop doing this type of stuff. Report the truth! 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 We need to get together and start looking at a lot of the tools and tactics we've used in many of the other campaigns that a lot of activists have been involved in, and bring those tools together to aim it at the media.
Perfect example.
Hey, CBS, what's the purpose of having a studio with windows so people can see inside for you to close the shades in the daylight?
Right.
There's no sun. It's cloudy outside. It's not like there's a glare. What you need? You need privacy? What you need privacy for? If you're going to be airing something on the air for all of us to see, you might as well leave the shades open, right? So let me get this right. You're going to air something for everyone to see, but you want the blind closed so people can't see from out here.
You want to stay there, bro?
Knock, knock. Knock, knock. CBS there? Is CBS there? Hello? Hello? They're not answering, guys. They don't care about us.
Well, I think we just saw what happened is that they closed the blinds on us, and they're trying to shut it out because they don't want people to get this story.
They don't usually put down there.
Here's a perfect example, people. They went and closed the blinds on us. And all we want is for them to report the truth.
Well, that's why we brought our own independent cameras to show this to people, to show that they can't trust the major news networks. You can't go to them for information. They're just going to silence it. They're going to shut it out. One thing they're not going to do is they're not going to put it on television.
Top it with crispy pickles and summer onions for a touch of North Carolina tang. All in a home-style bun. You're throwing good time, so what are you waiting for?
Everyone's calling this play. The McRib is back for $2.99 with tangy signature McRib sauce. This one won't last. Only at McDonald's. For a limited time, prices of participation right there.
You're on a scheduled program. You're on a scheduled program to report some real news.
So in 70 instances of police-involved murder, 0 police officers was found guilty. 0 police officers had even to face charges in their crimes. This, what makes it especially heinous, is the fact that this execution by Gildaro Sierra was recorded live on a police dash cam. And you can see the fatal shots being fired into an innocent, unarmed black man's back. Anita Alvarez has seen this footage and still called the shooting justified. She's sending the message clear as a bell. It is all right to shoot and injure men of color and communities of color in Chicago. We must stand and get this message out because mainstream media refuse to cover these stories.
Channel 5, man.
One of the biggest stories that the media doesn't report on is the fact that the media is more consolidated and privatized than any time before in history. The media lobby with the National Association of Broadcasters is one of the biggest lobbies in Washington. They spend over $100 million every year buying off our politicians. They spend hundreds of thousands of dollars taking them on paid vacations around the world. The FCC has given away the public airwaves for no money. The companies do not pay 1 penny to own the public broadcasting spectrum. And they use that to rake in hundreds of billions of dollars every year. The news won't report on stories that go against the corporations that own them. They won't report on stories that go against the advertisers that buy airtime on their network. The advertisers have to sign agreements with the networks that mandate that the networks will not broadcast anything that is offensive or harmful towards those corporations. This is how money is censoring our information. And you know who one of the biggest advertisers on the networks are? The politicians. In the last election cycle for the president, there was over $1 billion spent on presidential campaign advertisements. How can we trust the media to report and to be critical on these politicians when they're entirely dependent on the money from these ad campaigns? And so we have a democracy that's owned and controlled by corporations. They kick out every other political party but the Republicans and Democrats. And this is what we're left with. Now, the media should be here challenging this corrupt system. They should be the watchdogs that are looking out and pretty much raising hell over the fact that our democracy has been stolen by these corporations. But because the media has been bought and paid for by the corporations, and because they paid and bought and paid for the politicians with their lobbying, there's no accountability. So we're demanding that the FCC looks at these licensing renewals and says, no, we don't want just a blind renewal of the licenses for these media corporations. We want the monopolies broken up. We want the airwaves returned to the public. We want a free and independent media. We don't need no fake news. We need real news. We don't need no fake news. We need real news. Report the truth. Not lies. 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 We don't need no fake news. We need real news. We don't need no fake news. We need real news. When the mainstream media fails, there are other alternatives that you can go to for the real information. One of these places is Chicago Independent Media. When you go home, I want you to look it up online, and you can follow this story that you're not going to hear today on the mainstream news. You're going to have to go to Chicago Independent Media and other alternative news sources if you want to get the real information.
This is Dan Lin from the Illinois chapter of Normal, and you're watching Chicago Independent Television.
Chicago Independent Television is not brought to you by Blackwater, a worldwide leader in security and murder. Learn more at blackwaterbook.com. Blackwater, we kill innocent Iraqis so that you can feel more secure.
Are you an intelligent, free-thinking individual? Do you have rational and well-researched opinions on any of the following subjects? Does your global outlook not fit into one of two preconceived and oversimplified categories? If so, you may have a problem. But don't worry, the solution is only one click away. It's called the mainstream media. If consumed on a daily basis, the mainstream media can help significantly reduce the symptoms caused by individuality and autonomy. For years, millions of people around the world have been trusting the mainstream media to help relieve the pain and suffering caused by thinking about stuff. Millions of tests have proven it. This is John before he began consuming the mainstream media. Whether we like it or not, every aspect of our daily lives will be in some way affected by peak oil. It's unavoidable. And this is John after only 30 days of treatment. I sincerely believe that Britney Spears is not fit to have custody of her children. Kevin has repeatedly proven himself to be a much better parent. Say goodbye to complex questions and intelligent debates, and say hello to Timberlake, Hilton, and terrorists. So much terror, you'll be terrified. Don't live another day without it. Ask your doctor or government about it. The mainstream media. The mainstream media, because you're not paid to think. We're paid to do it for you.
Side effects may include a zombie-like existence, belief in fairy tales, and willful submission of constitutional rights. Results may vary. Brought to you by people who have much more power than you do, making the world a better place. For us.
Okay, this is Dave Kraft, Director of Nuclear Energy Information Service. You're watching Chicago Independent Television.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Illinois, the U.S. state with the most nuclear power plants, played host to a recent hearing of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. We'll learn more about this in this segment.
NEIS is a 32-year-old safe energy, anti-nuclear, pro-safe energy organization based in Chicago. We're here tonight at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission meeting on radioactive waste, and have a table here to urge people to not support the waste confidence rule. We have over 70,000 tons of hazardous, long-lived, spent nuclear fuel with no place to go. The NRC, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, has been allowing more waste to be created with no place to put it by giving license extensions to reactors or licensing new reactors. Last year, 2012, an appeals court in New York froze that process and ordered the NRC to go back and do a thorough environmental impact statement to assess whether or not they can actually store this waste safely. Up to this point, apparently, we really don't know if the waste is safe at the reactor sites, so that's what the meeting is about tonight. The other thing we're worried about is there's legislation before the Senate right now, if it passes, would create an additional layer of radioactive waste dumps around the country. The problem for Illinois is that the very first dump is supposed to be given preference to take waste from reactors that are already closed. Unfortunately, the Oak Ridge National Laboratory did a study and suggested that Illinois would be the prime place in the country for the first facility. So we're very concerned if this legislation passes that Illinois will get an additional 9,000 tons of high-level radioactive waste stored here for an indefinite period of time. Reactors are required by law to have what's called a spent fuel pool on site. It's a glorified swimming pool where they take the hot radioactive waste when it's used up in the reactor to store for a period of time to cool down, both in terms of radiation and in terms of heat. When it cools down sufficiently, they then start moving this waste to these air-cooled canisters on site called dry casks. A lot of utilities are applying to build these. They have to have a special license. So these are the two methods we're using right now to store the waste on site. But still, we're talking about waste that will be hazardous for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years and needs a final resting place. And this is what the country does not have yet, a permanent, deep, geological disposal facility. And that's what we're arguing we need.
Good evening, and welcome to this evening's Nuclear Regulatory Commission public meeting on the Waste Confidence Draft Generic Environmental Impact Statement and Proposed Rule. My name is Miriam Juckett, and I will be your facilitator for this evening's meeting. Before we get started, I'd like to go over just a few things that has to do with the process and the objectives so that everyone has a good idea of what to expect this evening. First of all, the objective for the NRC is to hear your comments and your recommendations on the draft generic environmental impact statement.
In 1914, Woodrow Wilson signed the bill that created the Fed. He thought it was one of the worst days of his life, and he had destroyed the country. He hadn't destroyed the country, he destroyed the world. Put an end to this, now!
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. The controversial oil extraction process known as fracking has drawn opposition from citizens and environmentalists alike. Here's a segment about an anti-fracking protest here in Chicago.
Today, on October 18th, thousands of people around the world are already uniting through over 250 actions on 6 continents for the 2nd annual Global Frackdown to raise awareness about the threat of hydraulic fracturing for oil and gas and what it's going to do to the environment.
This is Mike Callis reporting from Chicago Independent Television. Today is October 18th, 2013, and we're standing here in front of the James R. Thompson Center, protesting against fracking in Illinois. Today is a part of the Global Frackdown, where citizens across the state say no to fracking. People from Chicagoland Against Fracking, Illinois People's Action and Southern Illinoisans Against Fracking are demanding that Mark Miller, the head of the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, includes them in the conversation when it comes to drafting the legislation on fracking. Right now, fracking companies are trying to start fracking in Illinois in great areas, even like the Shawnee National Forest, a treasure of Illinois.
They want to frack in the Shawnee National Forest. What we are doing is absolutely insane.
The IDNR is staffed by lawyers from the oil and gas industry, and citizen input has been brushed aside and ignored.
People are scared because the hydrofracking process has a high probability of contaminating the water supply. Currently, fracking companies are exempt from the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Act, and even the Right to Know Act, which talks about the chemicals that companies are pouring into the environment. Therefore, gas and oil companies aren't required to abide the same laws and safety regulations that any other business would be required to do. Furthermore, the companies won't let people know what chemicals they're pouring into the earth. They say that the chemicals being used are their proprietary information, and therefore that they don't need to disclose the toxic substances that are being used.
Because this dirty, polluted water makes people sick. There are cancer clusters around the water wells in Texas and other states. Is that what we want for Illinois? No!
Already, people are finding that their groundwater is being contaminated. Certain odors are emitted. In some places, people have been reported to be able to light their water on fire from the tap due to natural gas escaping into the aquifers. These are the types of problems that Illinoisans are trying to avoid, and they are taking proactive action by coming to the streets and demanding accountability from our elected legislators.
I'll send a message to our elected officials around the world that we want a future that is powered by clean, renewable energy and not polluting fossil fuels.
This is Mike Callis reporting from the Global Frackdown for Chicago Independent Television.
Hi, I'm Vermin Supreme, and whenever I'm watching some sort of moving images on a screen, it's indie media for sure.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Chicago fast food workers have joined the Fight for 15 to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour. We'll see more, including a confrontation with the CEO of McDonald's, in these two short segments.
We're here to fight. We're not alone. We're here to form the union without retaliation, and we're tired of them not taking our work as they should. We need more money. We need to support our families. As workers, we all have different stories, and this is why we're here.
He makes in 2 or 3 hours at work what his employees, what McDonald's employees make in a year. Is this fair? No! They are the takers. These are the makers.
Yes!
Giving American workers a raise is the right thing to do, and it's the smart thing to do.
What do we want? When do we want? What do we want? When do we want?
Excuse me, the interruption. And a single mother of 2. It's really hard for me to feed my 2 kids and struggle day to day. Do you think this is fair that I have to be making $8.25 when I've worked for McDonald's for 10 years? The thing is that I need a raise, but you're not helping your employees. How is this possible?
You're going to be arrested.
You're asking and you're out here putting your face and said, I've done all this, but to your employees, you haven't done anything. Because we're still living on poverty wage. And you know what? It's just not fair.
Welcome back to Chicago Independent Television. Here's an excerpt on a recent rally in Chicago before the EPA hearing on global warming and the climate crisis.
Great, that was great. Thanks so much, you guys. Wow, Chicago! I wish you could see yourselves. This is a beautiful sight to see all of you turned out here today for what a really, really critical day for the future of our planet. I rode here this morning on a bus from Indianapolis. Where is my fellow Indiana bus riders? That's right. And folks stood up and shared why they were on the bus. We had young people there who are really worried about their future. We had faith leaders on the bus who are feeling climate change is the biggest moral issue of our time, especially because the effects on the most poor and vulnerable among us. We had business people on the bus who are worried about the effects of climate change on their bottom lines. And we had lots of parents and lots of grandparents on the bus who are terrified about the future that we might be leaving our children if we don't turn the corner on climate change. And the folks on that bus had one thing in common: the shared sense of urgency that we need to act on climate now. We know power plants are our #1 source of the carbon pollution that's pushing our planet to the brink. And so we are here to support EPA, showing the leadership that we have been desperate for in this country and around the world. And we are here today to support strong and just carbon standards for power plants.